Thanks for joining us on another episode of Beyond the Bot, where we take the latest and greatest in the world of AI and robotics and break it down for technology and business leaders that want to put these things to work in their businesses today. I'm excited to be joined by Paul Baker, the CFO and co-owner of Productiv 3PL, that's at the forefront of bringing these technologies to bear in the logistics industry. Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, Tony, thanks a lot for having me on.
Paul, I know our team has had the pleasure of getting to know you and your team very well over the past, year or so as we've been working closely together. But for our listeners, can you give us just a little bit about your history and the history of Productiv?
Sure. Personally, I started off on the finance side, but I've always been very entrepreneurial. Out of college, I did investment banking, worked in a startup, and then eventually made my way to a manufacturing company where over time I was a business manager across sites in the US. Always super interested in efficiency and efficiency, especially at the entry level workforce. One thing I found as I was traveling around the country is that there'd be certain circumstances where somebody who might be at the entry level who didn't show up for work might shut down $1 million piece of equipment. And so it was like, okay, there is a ton of leverage here. The entry level, and when I say entry level, this is that entry level wage, which typically is what the first job people would have before they start working their way up into skilled roles. But it's a big part of the workforce. And in some sites that might have anywhere from 100, 200, 300 people doing this type of basic work, there's a ton of efficiencies that get lost. And so that was really what led me into Productiv. Productiv has been around for 20 years. Their focus starting in 2006 was on how do we make the culture and the environment for this manual labor type of factory tasks such that we can drive costs down, efficiency up, and then share that efficiency gain with the client and with the workforce. So that was the whole mission. That's how I got into it. Productiv itself is a logistics and operations firm that specializes in kitting, assembly, and 3PL fulfillment and distribution. Specifically, we're helping clients get products into retailers as well as shipping out to homes. And our particular niche, when I say kitting and light assembly, is the items that require handwork. So a lot of this work is done by humans on an assembly line. And that's really what's led us into the robotics world and how we can start planning for the future.
So, Paul, as we talk about some of those efficiency improvements, before we get too deep into the robotics and sort of labor side of things, I know you guys are also leaders at deploying AI technology elsewhere in your business. Can you tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing with ProDocs and the exciting things that you found there?
Sure. And love talking about that part, Tony, because it's probably been one of the most prolific changes at our company over the course of the past 3 months is how we've implemented AI. So basically, what we're constantly looking at, how do we optimize human performance? And so one area we were looking at the end of last year was how can we optimize the dock? So right now, when we went to visit, we sat down with the receiving team, we talked through it. We were looking at staffing variations day to day. We were looking at trucks that didn't show up. We had trucks that showed up unexpectedly and said, okay, well, we're doing this manually over email and over Google Sheets and shared trackers. It's like, how can we do it better? And we did know that there's dock scheduling out there. It's been around for a very long time. So we looked at the major providers of dock scheduling software, dock management. And basically what we found was it was really expensive. Frankly, when we had quotes from anywhere from $15,000 to $50,000, we were looking at long implementation times. We're looking at having to retrain all of our team members, sign up for long-term agreements. And we said, okay, well, to replace email and Google trackers with a really expensive software didn't seem right. And so we actually looked at those in the summertime and held on it. And then towards the end of last year, I had a friend of mine who introduced me to Lovable. And he said, hey, our company started developing programs using Lovable. You should check it out. So we started playing around with it. And what we found was, wow, Lovable actually allowed us to build software for workflows. So the first one we tried was ProDocs. So our team, specifically our head of warehousing, Raj, got into Lovable and built a dock appointment scheduling software, and it took about 4 weeks. So we basically rolled it out to our team who loved it. And now what we have thought was going to be expensive SaaS software with a long implementation time turned out to be a pretty quick turnaround for software we built internally for, I think Lovable is like $100 a month. And now we've got dock scheduling software. And we said, okay, well, that worked out really well. What else can we do? And so we actually looked at all the manual processes that we were doing that were over email, PowerPoint, Excel trackers, and we went backwards and said, okay, well, let's start automating all of those. And it got to the point where we've now hired 2 developers who are helping us do it. So it's kind of one of those things where, hey, is AI going to hurt the jobs for software developers? And in our experience, we went from 1 to 3 because the AI tools made it such that it became so efficient and effective to roll out these tools. I mean, some now we're doing over the weekend and rolling out on a Monday, that our constraint became how fast can we do it? And so now we are actively pushing these out, taking feedback, implementing changes on a weekly basis. So we've loved that part of the AI system. Lovable is an incredible tool. We now use a few different tools and we have a team that's built up. And this is all because, frankly, the technology is out there that you're able to do these no code platforms and launch very quickly. And frankly, it's transforming the way that we do business. And we expect it to have a major cost impact over the long term that's going to allow us to eventually, reduce some prices for customers on some of these workflows that were traditionally manual that are going to be automated.
Wow, that's incredible. So when we look at this, sort of trend of companies trying and successfully using AI tools to build bespoke systems that, are not only more tailored for them, but also potentially more cost effective, you guys are living proof that it can really be done.
Yeah, and we are out there evangelizing this because when in most rooms that people ask, well, what are you using AI for? At this point, it seems like everybody is using ChatGPT at least to refine emails. So that seems to be the common one is people are asking ChatGPT for research. We're starting to see people come to us that are finding Productiv through ChatGPT when doing search for fulfillment or for kitting or reverse logistics. And what we're trying to say is, hey, it just recently, this new technology came out. We can move beyond using the chat windows and ChatGPT to actually anybody can start writing these programs. This is something that, I love going over to somebody's house and showing them in 5 minutes that app idea that they've had for months or years, they can now do and be done in 5 minutes, 90% of the way there. Now you can always tweak it, but this is out there. And so I think this is the next major leg up for AI rollout for a lot of companies is, how do we not go through the traditional SaaS buying cycle or the heavy IT integration or the heavy implementation or even having to work with someone to evaluate 3 different tools? Let's just build it ourselves. And frankly, Tony, we're going to our clients now and saying, hey, we are particularly good at this. We've now done it across 6 different tools that we've built ourselves. Some you're getting the benefit already. Can we help? And when I say help, like this is how do we enable you to do it yourself, do it for you, work together. But at the end of the day, we want to see our clients succeed. And this is the most incredible tool, frankly, that we've seen in order to deploy efficiency improvements at speed.
So from an outcomes perspective, it's not only a way for you to kind of, cut your own costs and operate more efficiently, but it sort of becomes a competitive edge that gives you a leg up in the marketplace. Is that fair to say?
For sure. So, and that's, we'll eventually start talking more about robotics here, right? Of course. But we see there's it's 2, right? So right now, AI software tools will save you money and be very cost effective and help advance your business. And then the robotics tools are going to be doing the exact same, probably in a much greater scale, but it's a little bit further down the line. So the good news is AI can have a really positive impact on your business today, and embodied AI is going to have it tomorrow. But we see these working really seamlessly. And the more work we do up front with the AI piece and the software piece now, almost the easier it's going to become to implement the robotics piece in the future as well.
So, Paul, we've talked a lot about the front office, but let's take this, as you mentioned, a little bit back into the back warehouse here, where, I know that you guys have not only been leaders on the AI side, but also on the robotic adoption side. Can you tell me a little bit about some of your maybe first steps into automation and what you learned along the way?
Our first steps were in 2019. We had a sorting robot that we worked with Pickle Robotics from, and it was fantastic, frankly. They came on site to our location in Richmond. They sent their teams down and we built a custom sort robot, or they built it over the course of a few months and deployed it, and it worked great. We had also looked at pick and place robots. So, we are specialists in kitting, which is at the heart of it is humans on a conveyor belt doing very mundane tasks over and over. So it is very basic type work, but it's also very difficult to automate. So back in 2019, when we had success with the sorting robot, we looked at, all right, great, this is working well. Can we also automate some of these pick and place tasks? But at the time, it wasn't possible. And then frankly, it didn't become possible again. And still we are above human cost, but it started to get more interesting to us last year. So over the course of the past 12 months, we've spoken to probably 20 or more robotics groups. Blue Sky, of course, being one of them, and the first one we worked with. But we said, okay, now with AI and with the cost of robotics, specifically the arms and humanoids coming down, does it now make sense? And what didn't work from 2019 through 2025 finally hit the cost curve of, okay, we can now see a path to how this is going to be rolled out across the economy over the course of the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And that's when we decided that we wanted to start investing in it.
And, we know that pick and place, especially from an unstructured environment, has sort of been the gold standard for robotics for a long time. It's a very difficult mark to meet. How do you see, now that technology is becoming more attainable, that playing out in the broader industry?
I think it's going to be profoundly scaled throughout the industry as quickly as possible, but when it hits a little bit closer to human parity. So the cost curve on robotics in replacing manual labor tasks reminds me very much of the solar power dollar per watt cost curve going back 15 years. At that point, we saw technological advancements in solar technology. While it was more expensive than traditional fossil fuels, you could plot out what year or very close to it would become at parity, and then when it'd finally be more affordable than traditional models. And we see the same thing on the robotics side. So right now, we look at where we are with our robotics partners, and we think that within probably 6 to 24 months, depending on the technological speed, we'll be at a point of parity with humans. And then once that happens, at parity or above parity, we'll start to see a massive acceleration in how this is deployed. Up until parity, there is a lot of challenges to work through. When we work with a partner, they're typically on site with us for months at a time to get set up and start to fine tune and iterate. But we see the technology approaching parity with humans. And then once it gets close there, more people will start investing. But that's right now, we view ourselves as early and at the forefront of this, knowing that it's going to get there pretty soon.
Yeah, definitely sort of on the bleeding edge there, and when we kind of go back in time and think back to some of those first conversations that you and I had together, there are a lot of ways that we can evaluate success for an effort like this, especially when we look at this as a real partnership, which is, I think, one of the things that's made this relationship really work. But outside of some of the sort of technical measures of success, like throughput speed and skew variation and accuracy, how do you guys evaluate success for an effort like this? Is it really all around kind of the speed and cost side, or are there benefits on verification and accuracy as well?
There are benefits on both, and there's a lot of different angles to look at it. So I'd say tier one, we're looking at accuracy. So can these be as accurate as humans? So in general, for pick and place tasks, human accuracy is 99.9999. People can generally pick up and place an item over and over without an error. The robots right now, because we don't have the dexterity that a human hand has, we're typically dealing with end effectors that are claws or grippers or vacuum. It's not 100%. So the first major metric that we're looking at is, can it successfully pick up and place over and over? So on our lines, we tend to run anywhere from 500 to 1,000 units per hour. So over a course of a shift, that's going to be about 1,000 times that robot is going to be picking and placing an item. So accuracy is the first one that we're looking for. After accuracy, we're then looking for, how many actual items can it pick up? So human hand can pick up anything. In our warehouses, we're doing everything from cosmetics to sporting goods, all different shapes, sizes, and weights. Humans have no problem picking those up, but once again, robots can only pick up a fraction of that. So what percentage of the work that we're doing can a robot also do? So that's the second piece is, and then the third is, how fast can it go? So we ideally want the robot to be able to pick up and place anything a human can with the same accuracy at the same speed. And so right now, all three of those, it's not at human performance, but those are the first three that we're looking at. To the point of your question, on the other angles here. So once we get past those three major KPIs, the next becomes, okay, well, what can robots do in addition? So a few things that they have in addition to what humans could do would be vision verification. So the first is on the human side, when we look for verification of the task being complete, we can do that by somebody else down the line, somebody doing an out of box audit. We can do way counting, or it could do vision, but those are all end of the line type items and they all have their drawbacks. But from a robot's perspective, there's an ability to actually confirm the item was picked up and placed and then store that in a database. And then we can run reports on that. So the verification through the robotic vision is one area where robots can add some value to beyond what humans can do. Other areas are clearly around the workforce piece. So in a warehouse facility like ours, we've got 500 people in one of our facilities. At some point, we run out of parking spots and break room areas and bathrooms and microwaves. So there is a physical limit of how many people can work inside of a building because people all need to get there and they need to, have a place that they can take breaks. On the robot side, the limit's going to be on electricity. So space and electricity, but they clearly don't need to park. And they don't need break rooms. In our ideal world, we would have a combination of robots and humans where it's basically the right number of each. So we've got a facility that can accommodate humans and they can do what the humans excel at. And then the robots can handle the mundane tasks where they can also look for the verification of those tasks. But together, it's going to be really potent.
You just said something really interesting, which kind of gets to this future of human robot collaboration and sort of the industry 4.0 side of things. And, we hear a lot of folks in this space talking about the future of warehouses being dark, and not that they have sort of a dim outlook, but that you have enough automation that you're able to, for example, turn the lights off. And, one thing that we talk a lot about is this idea of not necessarily dark warehouses, but dim warehouses, where you do have automation, exactly as you said, sort of taking over those things that robots do best and still deploying human labor in places where the human touch still adds more value. Can you give me a little insight into what you look at as, you sort of zoom forward in the future, maybe 5, 10, 15 years? What are those tasks that you think humans will always be doing that, they provide some sort of value that automation just may not be able to match?
Yeah, Tony, I love the way you phrase it, dim warehouse versus dark. I think that's a good way to put it. I think when you have public companies talking about margin expansion, clearly a dark warehouse is where they see the most, right? So that for some reason that is the cheap alternative option or the ultimate goal at the end of the day. But having said that, I think we also have to come back to timescales. So in 50 years, sure, a dark warehouse might make a lot of sense. The world looks a lot different. It's really tough to project what that looks like today. I think that when we look at what should be the balance of human and robot, it's going to change every 5 years for the next 50 years. So right now, the right balance is basically predominantly humans with some robots that are starting to be trained so that the humans are getting used to working with the robots and the robots are starting to get up the learning curve on those key metrics that we talked about earlier. In 5 years from now, I'd expect that the robots can do a lot of the mundane tasks, such as pick and place on a conveyor belt or anything that's dangerous within the warehouse. But we likely still have humans that are coordinating and then also doing the client service. But the client service is going to change a little bit as well because the humans right now do 100% of client service. In the future, there'll probably be 50% agentic and 50% human. So some of those requests are going to be handled by agents and some will be human. 5 years after that, it's too soon to tell. So there's always going to be some balance of human and robot until at some point way down the line when it does become a dark warehouse. But we still find what our clients do, that there is a need for communication. There is a human need to come and see that the people that you're working with are experts, that they care about what you do, that they prioritize it. So there's going to be a lot of the actual, I wouldn't say customer service, but it's the human relationship aspect of knowing that your vendor is really a partner and that they are helping you succeed and give your business a competitive advantage. So in doing so, humans are going to be communicating that and making it happen, and robots are going to be a tool in how that competitive advantage gets manifest.